What's going on, everybody? Hey, it's Monday. Welcome. I'm Mike. This lovely lady is Wendy, and you are in the Marriage Shop. Yeah, we back open, y'all. It's been a week, so um, as you come on, go ahead and bring in your people because hey, we back. Yeah, take a little break last week, and it's a good thing we did.
Yeah, why? Because of what happened in the house?
Yeah. What day
Oh,
was that?
Tuesday.
Oh, had nothing to do with
Was
it.
it Tuesday?
I mean,
No,
it
no,
was
it wasn't
Wednesday. It
Tuesday.
was Wednesday.
It was Wednesday
Yeah,
night.
so actually it had nothing to do with the marriage shop. So never mind. Never
Yeah.
mind. So, but yeah, we've had I think a really eventful week this week, or last week. Really eventful.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was in Florida with my dad. We do an annual fishing trip, and we went down to Okeechobee, Lake Okeechobee. If you're a bass fisherman, you know it's like the mecca of bass fishing lakes, basically, right?
Yeah.
You got to do
If
Okeechobee
you're
at
a
least
bass fisherman.
once, yeah, and and if you do it once, you got to do it more. So we're already trying to figure out how to make this thing happen, get back
That's
down there.
funny.
But it was a great time. Matter of fact, I got a picture. I think.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, Shelly Wilson,
Let me
thanks for
see.
joining us. While you pull up that picture,
Mm-hmm.
you got it.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. Yeah, that's. Hopefully y'all can see that. But that's me and my dad, Clarence, out on Okeechobee. This is actually the last hour of the last day.
Mm,
So, you know, he was killing it. You
that's
should have
pretty good.
seen the one I caught.
Oh my goodness.
That's
You
hilarious.
know what they always say.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but they weren't there, so who knows? Who knows
Yeah.
the real truth?
Yeah, so while you were away, I
Mm.
had the privilege of being at the ribbon cut for Shelly Wilson.
Oh, that's right. Congratulations,
Yes.
Shelly Wilson.
Yeah, yeah, and it was
Wow,
really
made a
special.
big step.
She has some really creative ideas and thoughtful things and thoughtful ways to think of people and
Hmm.
the way that she really kind of went into describing even the founder of the company send out cards but in
Hmm.
terms of when you have that little that thought or that urging or the little tinge of maybe I should call that person, or
Yeah.
maybe, maybe I should send them an email or something like that,
Yeah.
and really kind of encouraging us to do exactly that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that was beautiful.
What is it? And Shelly, put the name of your company in there. Put the information in the chat. We would love to share that.
Yes, yes.
And speaking of sharing too, one more thing on the fishing. The first day I decided this year going to Okeechobee is kind of it's a challenging place if you've never been there, in terms of just navigating, knowing where to go or whatnot. It's a big lake, and so I hired a guide, contacted a guide service, and I'll tell you the whole story of how it came together. But I'll just simply say we like really we got the right person. It was like a guide thing, I think, right? Colton Hester is a guide down there. He guides on Okeechobee like in the spring, and then in the summer he does guide work out on the Atlantic. And so, but he's also a professional fisherman, so he's on Tournament Trail as well. He's actually in Eufaula, Alabama this week, Lake Eufaula,
Wow.
fishing the Toyota Series down there, Major League Fishing. So, dude's the real deal. Literally everything he taught me or told me worked.
That's pretty good.
Like literally every lure, every technique, whatever. I gave it a shot. Boom. Like that was crazy. The man knows his business. So y'all can follow him at Colton Hester Fishing.
Colton Hester Fishing.
Yep, that's on Instagram.
Okay.
So follow him on that. Matter of fact, I'll stick it right there in the chat. But follow that dude. If you go to Okeechobee in the spring, wintertime, holler at him for a guide type thing. If you want to go deep sea, like on the other side or whatever, saltwater, deep sea, I don't know. He's out there in saltwater somewhere.
Yeah.
Hit him up.
Like, trying to catch marlin or
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know about marlin and tuna. Some other stuff. He can tell you all about it, but yeah. He's I think it's in the Port St. Lucie area, if I'm not mistaken. So, Colton Hester, look him up. Whatever. It was great.
Okay,
It was
and
great.
Shelly, thanks for dropping that in there. And you guys should definitely check it out, especially if you're one of those people who it's like it's hard to remember dates and things pop up on your calendar, and you're like, it's too late to send something or something like that. And she's definitely blessed us with a couple of surprise images.
Yeah, you all need this. And some of you don't even know you need it yet, but trust me, you need this.
It's good. It's good.
It's seriously. So we love the work that she's been doing for a long time. So it's great to see that Shelly Wilson is actually kind of putting it out there.
Yeah.
It's good.
And so I missed you.
Yeah, I missed you too. What a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed longer this year than past years, but it was good.
Well, shoot, the drive was certainly longer. I will tell you
The
that.
drive was longer, yeah. And then our bathroom flooded.
Yeah.
That was rough.
We
and
got-
at like 11 o'clock at night, the whole bathroom flooded. Like the whole bathroom. And our closet flooded. Oh, it was awful.
At the closet. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been a real interesting, like 2023 in water. I don't know what it is.
Something.
Something's happening.
Yeah. But
We must be on the
hey,
right
it's
track.
all good.
Yeah.
Didn't have to leave the house, and Servpro was on it. It came in right away, and so it was good.
Serve Pro, like it never even happened, y'all. Even
That's
though
what they say.
we're not to that part yet. Oh, it looked
No.
like it happened all right. So
Something has happened.
something happened.
Clearly.
Major. So,
And everybody's walking in like, whoa, is this it? It's like, yeah, no, that's the kitchen.
Keep walking. Yeah, that was last month's challenge. It's too much. I don't even know. So yeah, we even debated tonight. Like, you know what? Close the marriage shop, but no. You know what I'm saying? We still have water. We got power.
Yeah, we have a roof over our heads.
We got a roof, so why not? Let's go.
Yes, we are blessed. Arvia and Grandpa Hobson, thank you.
Hey, good to see y'all.
Thanks for joining us. So we this is part 3. So if you've joined us for the last couple of weeks, not last week, but the weeks before that, we were talking about what did we talk about? Part 1 was
It was about sex, right? Sex expectations, right? Sex as important, but secondary.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, and then part 2 was 2 weeks ago.
Yep, misguided expectations. It's kind of a conversation about where our expectations around sex come from, right? And how that plays out in our marriages, and maybe some ways to get around that.
Yeah, and when we talked
So,
about both of those, we did talk about, or we kind of alluded to other challenges around sex and marriage, sex in marriage. And so we said, yeah, but we're going to get to that. And so tonight we're getting to that. And so it also happens to be the second Monday in May, which means that we usually make our topics kind of focused more towards people who are not married yet. But I think this is appropriate whether you're married or not. And so we're going to go forward with it. And I think even some of the same principles apply.
Yeah.
I think there's some good stuff in here. So,
no question.
yeah. So we
So-
appreciate you guys joining us those last several weeks. And if you think we shared something that might be beneficial, then make sure you tag somebody and bring them on in here tonight.
So look, on our monitor screen, I'm looking, I'm like, wow, my my forehead and my cheeks don't match. And my hands and my arms don't match either. It's like I took the glasses off thinking it was gonna like minimize that effect, but apparently
Yeah, I
it will
mean,
not.
unless you point it out. I mean, it's your
just
neck
did.
that's like really, yeah, it's almost, you got like an ombre thing going.
Yeah, an ombre thing, whatever that is. Oh, is this like
Like
the
it's-
fade, like
yes.
the transition?
From light to dark.
Come on, you didn't know I had that knowledge, did you? Of course you did. All right, so let's go.
Yeah.
All right,
So, so what are we talking about tonight?
tonight we're talking about what happens when sex is not possible. Yeah, like what do you do? Because we talked about sex as an important aspect of marriage. It's an important component of it. But the fact is, not everybody is able to have sex in their marriage. Like, so what do you do then?
Yeah.
Because that can create some real tension. It can create some division and anxieties. There's all kind of problems that can come about if you can't, for whatever reason, if you're unable to engage in sex with your spouse.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, wherever you are in your marriage, whether you've been married, 2 hours or 45 years, this whole idea of, maybe at some point within your marriage, you will either have a temporary amount of time where you cannot have sex, or as you become older, you may be physically unable to have sex. And so it is, I'm not going to say it's inevitable, because there's certainly some people who boast about having sex into their 90s. I mean, it's a thing. I'm not going to say it's inevitable, but I will say that for many people, it is something that within marriage is one of those challenges that we have to deal with.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true. And if it's not, even if you're young, I mean, things happen, right? And so if something kind of comes upon you when you're young, that's not necessarily a temporary thing. That could be a permanent thing as well.
Yes.
And so what do you do if we're talking about all the time that sex is important, but yet it's not happening in your marriage, and maybe at times maybe you might be frustrated about it, maybe you might be disappointed or sad or mourning it, right? What do you do? And so I think that I'll really lead with a thought that we put out there, I don't know, a few weeks ago, this idea that your relationship can thrive on love and intimacy, right? But it can't survive on sex alone. So if something has to be pulled from that equation, the physical act of sex, you can't survive on that alone. Your relationship won't thrive, but it can still thrive with love and intimacy. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, people, we talk about sex from a very early point in our lives, right? And whether that is sex education in school and the mechanics of it, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, whether it's introduced in that way, or you recognize it as something that your parents are doing. If you ever had the misfortune of walking in on your parents engaged and having
Thank
sex,
God I don't have that one.
we have done everything that we can in our power to prevent that from happening to us.
Almost. There have been moments where it's been like, whatever, man. Look, they roll in here. They get what they get. Sorry.
Yeah, that might be
scarring.
what you say,
Yeah,
right? But
but
the
then-
one time in 25 years, we got walked in on.
Yep, don't remember that. What did I like dive off to the side of the bed or something?
To
What?
the side of the couch. You remember?
Oh, that. Too much information.
I'm
Anyway,
just saying. I'm just
yeah, it was
saying.
like, wow, I didn't realize I could be so cat-like.
It was quick for both
Anyway,
of us. We got down like we were being fired upon. Like we were had to jump in a
what are you
foxhole.
doing here? Anyway,
That was so
but that's
unexpected.
another story for for another night.
Yes, but in 25 years, so one time. So, I mean, we can joke about that, but however it is that you came to know about sex, at that point, you start developing expectations about it, right? You're curious about it. You want to know what it is or what it does or how to do it and all those things. And then that leads to your relationships and that first time that you had sex. And, you know, for some people, that's like an amazing memory. And for some people, it's an awful one.
Yeah.
And so we talked about that too, you know, how you were introduced to sex and when in your life has an impact on your perspectives and your outlook on sex, even to this day.
True. Yeah.
So, as we talk about that and even your expectations coming into marriage, right? Some people, before they get married, some people wait to have sex until marriage. So then there's the anticipation of, okay, well, I've waited, you know, now we're married. Now we can do it. And even in that, there's a great deal of education that needs to occur, I think. What were you about to say?
Nothing good.
Yeah. So there's that, right? The ones that wait until marriage. Then there are the ones that don't wait until marriage, and then they get married. And again, the expectations that you have going forward from there. And
Yeah.
then just as you know, as we're married, maybe you believed or you were told that once you get married, you will have sex every day, and it's nonstop sex, like all the time, anywhere, anytime you want it, and nobody can ever say no.
Misguided expectations.
That
That was last week,
that could be true.
right?
Yes. And then there's the reality that many of us, most of us live out, right? That we learn that maybe it's not even physically possible to have sex every single day, right? Nonstop, anywhere, anytime. That it's potentially over glamorized in movies and on TV. And perhaps the people that told you about it didn't know what they were talking about. And so here you are living your life in a marriage or in a long-term committed relationship, and you are working through those thoughts, those expectations, even the emotions that surround sex, right? And so that's why we've dedicated 3 parts to talking about this thing.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to even, you know, at this point where we're talking about if you have a sexless relationship or a sexless marriage, there could be causes for that, but then there maybe sometimes it's a decision that's made. And so for a number of reasons, what we want you to take away from this is that your marriage, your relationship can survive without sex. If you don't hear anything else that we say.
Right. And so some of you are like, what?
What did she just say?
I don't think so. Right. And so I see Daryl T. Jackson is in the house. What's up, sir? I don't know who Big Boy Sneaks is. Big Boy Sneaks. Throw your name in there if you can. And we saw the Hobsons already, right?
Yeah,
Shelley.
yeah.
Okay, good. Just make sure we kind of ran it down a little bit. But there's a number of possible reasons why sex may have stopped in a marriage, and so we're specifically talking about a certain set of reasons tonight. But I want to highlight a few that might sound familiar to you.
Yeah.
Right. Temporary things, major life events, grief, pregnancy, childbirth, marital conflict, all those there can be things that happen to just shut things down for a time
Yeah.
in your marriage, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's scripture in 1 Corinthians that talks about not to deny each other, but to just stop for a time in agreement so that you can pray and then come back together later.
Yeah.
We're not talking about those necessarily tonight, right? Because they tend to be temporary, and all things being normal and otherwise, then the idea is that you probably are going to transition back into something that looks like whatever your normal sex life is, right? So we're talking about when sex is not possible, right? So we're not talking about abstaining. We're not talking about agreeing. We're talking about just not going to happen, can't happen for whatever reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that could be, medical conditions, erectile dysfunction, illness, etc. It could be physical limitations. It could be injury.
Yeah.
It can be also mental health conditions that because engaging in sex, it is very much as a physical act, but it's also a mental emotional act as well. And there's a certain state that you need to be in order for all that to come together. And sometimes that's just not happening for some people, right?
Yeah, I mean, in the way that you say that, I mean, if you think mind and body, right? Because I think often we think of sex as just the physical act. I mean, and I say we, I mean, in general, people, when you talk about sex, the image that appears is a physical image, right? You think about what physically is required. But we don't talk a lot about the mental emotional piece, right? Specifically as it relates to men. I think often, we can talk about how, women are emotional creatures and that, part of foreplay, we've even had discussions about that. Part of foreplay is really kind of getting to the mind of the woman in order to really make it physically possible, right? To ease the physical act of having sex.
Yeah, that's true.
But we don't talk about emotional and mental aspects with men.
Well, it's just it's a misnomer, right? Because when we talk about emotional and being emotional and emotions, a lot of men like you're not emotional. It's just all about physical. One simple test to just discard that whole notion
There's
is
a test?
Well, not a test, but just something that many people know to be true. Like get that dude going and make him think that it's going down, and then it's not. Or he's like, oh, I'm kind of yearning, girl, come on, right? And say no. Then what, right? I mean, I think men are very much emotional creatures. Culturally speaking, there are certain things that feel safe to express, and certain things that do not. But don't get it twisted, right? Men very much have to deal with emotions as well, right? So, but there are certain things that just shut down your sex life. And for some people, they're looking at a marriage where sex is not going to be possible.
Yeah.
Like ever. The physical act that when he's alluding to, right? And so, Tommy Taylor. I'm Tommy Taylor. Hey, good to see you, man. From the BBB. So
and he says men are extremely emotional.
No question.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, oftentimes we would try to push away from that and deny that. And that in and of itself creates its own problem. So we're not talking about that quite tonight. We're talking about what do you do in a relationship? Because some people, when we use the word intimacy, they use that interchangeably.
Yes.
Right? With sex. So sex not possible, intimacy not possible either.
You're saying that's what they say.
That's what they say.
Yes.
Yeah. Right? And so...
but that's not true.
That is not true. And we're here to kind of talk about how you get beyond that, right? Because when you take your vows, those covenant vows when you get married, I'm pretty sure that in none of those vows, and I don't even know you, all of you, wasn't at your wedding, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't a sub clause until the sex stops. I'm sure that wasn't in there. Like, I'm with you forever unless the sex stops. I bet you wasn't there.
Yeah, but it's interesting how sex enters the conversation and how we learn, quite honestly, to leverage sex in a lot of relationships, right? And this whole idea that even the threat of if we're not having sex, then if that, then this, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't have sex with me, then I'm going to have sex with somebody else. I'm going to find somebody else. When you won't have sex with me, I will pleasure myself. All of these different situations that kind of weaponize sex within the relationship that really make it challenging, difficult, and often unfair for a number of reasons without getting to the root of how we got here.
You know what? It's a great point in that this topic we're talking about in relationship where sex is not possible. But, as I think about it, we're talking about in a relationship.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Right? Because your relationship can't hinge on your sex life. That cannot be the make or break of your relationship.
Right. Well, it shouldn't be. And so we have met people, and we've met couples who were quite sexually compatible, but really were not compatible in any other way.
Yeah. True.
So they were, as long as they were having sex, everything's fine. But if you remove that, then they had nothing left
Yeah.
that they valued or that they saw the value of. And so that's real.
That is real.
That's real.
And so
But we're talking about, because I could keep bringing in, well, this. We could make this 8 parts, but we're not going to do that. I know. But the reason why this is important, and so many of you know that my background is nursing. And I've learned about sex, talked about sex, taught about sex, have examined it, explored it, written about it.
Really?
All of those things.
It's all that. This is nursing school?
No, in my life. I'm just saying that my background is nursing. And
I
so
know. I'm just saying,
so
wow.
there are a number of health conditions that can impact your ability to have sex.
Yeah.
And we're really kind of getting to that when you do not have the ability to physically have sex.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true. A number of conditions. And all of those conditions aren't like around, your sexual function, right? There's a lot of things that, or should I say your sexual anatomy. There's a lot of things that impact your functioning. And so we don't get to choose things that are gonna, kind of come upon us in our lives and, during our marriages and our lives. But things happen along the way. Tomorrow you could get news that, hey, this is a condition, boom, right? And all of a sudden everything's impacted. And so I think that the important thing to recognize, if sex isn't possible, is that God can give you what you need. And I know, to be real about it, I'm fairly certain, I won't say I know, but there are people who are like, well, I mean, yeah, that's not going to cut it. Right? It's just not going to cut it. And so it will if you allow him to.
Yeah.
Right? And so, the idea of maintaining a close and meaningful relationship with your spouse, it begins internally and then it extends externally. And part of that internal is your relationship with God. Right? Mm-hmm. How much are you allowing God to come into your heart? How much are you reading the word and understanding what the word means as it pertains to your relationship?
Yeah.
How are you trying to live out these principles that God has put forth and the things that Jesus talked about and taught, right? And the example that Jesus gave, particularly to us husbands, of his death on the cross and his resurrection, but the sacrifice of himself, right? How much of that comes into play? And some people might be like, well, what does that have to do with sex?
Yeah,
right?
Good point.
Because ultimately, we said this probably during the first session of this. We encourage you to go back if you didn't see it. Part 1, when the whole point was sex. It's important, but it is not the end all be all, right?
Yeah.
It's secondary, actually. The important thing is your ability to surrender everything. Right? The important thing is, for this person that you say you love, right? It can't be about you. And so when we begin to get onto that thing of, what we're missing, what we're not getting, what I'm not getting, what I need, that's very me-centric, right? And so it can't be about that.
Yeah. I remember when we talked about being love, right? And showing love. And so I would challenge you to consider, what are the ways that you know how to show love that don't include sex? I think that if we reflect and take inventory of that, that really kind of puts some things into perspective. Because, for some of you, you may say, oh, I have a whole arsenal of things that I do that, whatever those things are, right? I could start a list. You could say, oh yeah, I got a whole lot of, tricks up my sleeve that don't involve sex. And then some of us, it might be like, wow, I'm struggling to come up with how I express love and how I connect without sex. And so, I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently who's undergoing treatment for cancer.
Yeah.
And talking about how that can impact the body and the mind, and how that impacts your relationship, right? Your ability to even be physically close, not even talking about sex per se, but even being physically close can be impacted by illness or treatments or all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and for a time, I believe that a lot of us, most of us, are very thoughtful and, patient, and, hey, we'll take our time. When it gets better, it'll be fine, right? And so sometimes you can kind of enter into a space where it's like, man, okay, it's never going to happen. Then what, right? A lot of veterans actually experience that, different types of injuries, things like that. They come back from being in some very devastating situations
Yeah.
that, change their body for their entire lives. What do you do, right? And
Yeah, that's good.
so it can't be about simply the physical act. So we're going to just offer a few ways to thrive when sex is unavailable to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And then the other thing, before we get to a few ways, because I said week one that we would talk about the how. So this is kind of getting to some of the how, but this whole idea of my challenge to you in identifying ways that you know how to connect or show love that don't involve sex. This whole idea of even confronting your own feelings about how you respond when sex is not an option, right? How do you respond when you're being told no, or when you find out that you can't, or that the other person can't? Do you respond to that with love and understanding and patience, or do you respond to that with impatience and anger and resentment, right? And because all of those things can also be true. And so I think it's important for us to really kind of check ourselves on this one, right? Because at the end of the day, I think we're selfish. Inherently, we are selfish beings. Humans are selfish.
Yeah.
And
That
God
includes
knew
you.
that. Yeah,
You,
God
human.
God,
That includes you.
God knew that we were selfish from the very beginning. And so this whole idea of wanting what you want when you want it, right? And even if it isn't about wanting what you want when you want it, it's this whole premise of being denied what you want when you want it, and how that impacts your relationship and how you relate to each other, right? What impact would that have? And if you haven't had to experience it, then you are truly blessed. But what? How would you respond if you were all ready and you're heading into, let's just keep it conventional, into the bedroom thinking it's about to go down, and the response from your spouse is no, not tonight? Well, think about that and how you respond to that in contrast to getting news from a physician or from your spouse that it's not possible, and we don't know if it will ever be possible, right? Two different scenarios. So it's not just a not tonight, it's a not ever again.
Yeah. And so, and as we're talking, I'm thinking like, man, because we talked about a lot of stuff, keeping it hot, blah, blah, like this particular one, this one, it might strike some of you as a little heavy,
Yeah.
right? But I think it's necessary to not avoid the things that are heavy, because there are people right now going through this, things that are heavy and difficult to deal with, and challenges that they can't control.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for us not to avoid that, right?
Yeah, I think that's really good. And this whole idea of, you know, everything is not always unicorns and rainbows, as people say, right? Everything is not perfect. Every marriage is not endless sex, as I started out saying, in terms of expectations. And maybe yours is, ours isn't, most aren't. And it's, and my guidance and what I share with young women often is you should not engage in sex unless you are wholeheartedly present. And when I say that, I mean like mind and body are aligned, that you have made up your mind and made a decision that this is something that you want to do, and you are fully present, because the worst thing you could do is have sex but not be mentally or emotionally connected or present. And what do I mean by that? Well, certainly people do it, right? And it seemingly it doesn't really cause any harm, but it can be extremely damaging, especially if you're just going through the motions literally, but you're not connecting. And so when we talk about that whole idea of intimacy, intimacy is not just physically being connected, it's so much more than that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And those are things that are important. I think, Grandpa Hobson put in, love is.
Yeah.
And I assume he's talking in 1 Corinthians 13. And I thought, okay, maybe as we kind of move into this, all these elements
Yeah.
apply, right? So 1 Corinthians 13. And I'll start you all at verse 4. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist in its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. All right. So that's through verse 7.
Yeah.
So what are we saying? What we're saying is the absence of sex fits in that all things category, right? Not insisting in one's own way kind of fits into this conversation. There's a lot of elements of that. That's what love is, right? And so one of the first things that you probably need to consider when sex is possible is to find ways to maintain contact and connection
Okay.
with your spouse, with each other, but also with God.
That's important.
Very important aspect of that,
Yeah.
because God can give you everything that you need. Even when you thought, maybe you could never live without sex. I'm pretty sure there was a time in your life you probably thought, yeah, I can't do it. But God can give you everything you need, and you can be fulfilled with the partner that you have, with the spouse that you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I think
Totally fulfilled.
Yeah, but I think it's also necessary to distinguish between covenant, right? The covenantal relationship that exists. Because if
Yeah.
God is in your marriage, is part of your relationship, then that is true, right? But if you have a something other than covenant, whether it's a contract or an agreement or whatever, then that makes it more difficult.
Yeah, and so that's why that maintaining that contact and that connection,
Yeah.
right? That connection with God through what? Through prayer, individually and together, through
Yeah.
worshiping together, reading together, talking about what love is together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Really important, and maintaining this prayer life and this worship life together.
Yeah.
What's up, Jared Wilson? We see you.
Yeah, yeah.
Welcome.
And if you haven't had this conversation, we want you to have this conversation, right? And it's a different conversation. But again, to sit down and say, well, what if we got news that tomorrow we could no longer have sex, like ever again? What would we be left with?
Yeah,
That's the conversation starter.
that's a good conversation starter.
I think so.
Yeah. We need to kick those back in too, those like intentionally. Anywho, yeah. So it's a great question.
Yeah, yeah. And so Tommy says intimacy begins when you're into me and us. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
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 So you said maintain contact and connection. And one way to do that is to pray and worship together.
Yeah, pray and
right?
worship together. Yeah. But then like do life together.
Okay. Say more.
Like we talk about going on dates and all the time and traveling, just experiencing life together and enjoying the company and the appearance and the words of the bride of your youth, right? of your husband, like just experiencing each other, because just doing that brings you closer together, because you're creating your entire life, you're building something together. Either you're building something up or you're tearing something down, generally, right?
Yeah.
And so experiencing life together, I think, is really important, because you begin to recognize, if you haven't already, just how valuable that person you married is, and how much, and hopefully how much you enjoy, creating new things, experiencing new things with them,
Yeah.
right?
And so we recognize that we go through different seasons in life, and certainly those seasons can tend to bring us together or push us apart. And when you're in the season of having very young children or toddlers, infants or toddlers, that can be a really challenging time because everybody's exhausted.
Yeah.
In most cases, and not to say that everybody experiences the same thing, but generally speaking, everybody's exhausted, right? Everybody is sleep deprived. We're trying to figure it out as you're starting out, and then as your children get older, then schedules can get busy, right? And so then you're in that season of everybody being in different places at the same time, and trying to figure out even if you're able to take a vacation or spend time together,
Yeah.
right? That's when people usually try to identify a date night or commit to at least a date night every week, so that they can maintain that opportunity to reconnect or connect, right? And we highly recommend those, by the way. So if you haven't kicked in date night, highly recommend that you kick in date night. Not date night per se, but protecting time that you exclusively spend with each other. And doing that before your children are grown and leave the house. Why? Well, because if you don't spend that time doing that, which is kind of the premise of even us giving you conversation starters, if you wait until you reach that point, you may have waited too long and it may be too late, and you're not able to relate to each other, and you find it difficult to connect with each other, and you find that you have differing and opposite interests, and that you really don't enjoy being with the person that you married. All of those things could be a reality for you if you're not, from the day that you get married, consistently and constantly working to maintain your connection.
Yeah, because the connection is a thing that could very well, like, save your marriage in times of trouble, right? It will save your marriage,
Yeah.
right? So, so if sex is not possible, we want you to consider just maintaining connection spiritually, and also just have some fun, do some different things, do experience and learn and create life together, pray together,
Yeah.
worship together, things like that.
Yeah.
The next thing though is broaden your options, because we think about sex. Oftentimes, some people think about sex as just one thing when
Yeah.
it could be many things. I think it's important to discover ways to create pleasure for one another. Like, use your whole body. And so some people are like, "Oh no, don't cut your pearls just yet," because, like,
Clutching your pearls.
it's it is. I just want you to, and we talked about Song of Solomon. I don't know how many people have actually taken us up on that and read it. Read it line by line, because Song of Solomon, when I talk about using your whole body, I mean, they kind of like talk about the whole body,
Yeah.
right? In terms of what's going on in Song of Solomon. So be creative. And it's okay, y'all, for real. Like Hebrews 13:4 says, let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled.
Undefiled.
Right?
Yeah.
It's good. If y'all are in agreement, you're good.
Yes, that is the guidance. We get that question a lot. What is allowable as it relates to sex in marriage? So say
Yeah.
what you said again.
If you're in agreement, it's good. But I mean, but that doesn't mean including, if you're in agreement that somebody else need to be in there. No, that's not good, right? So just be clear on that. This is like between you, what you determine, and so it's okay to begin to really explore each other and explore how you feel about things and how you feel in certain situations, and to create something of your very own, right?
Yeah, and talk about it. I mean, communication is so key, especially as it relates to sex, right? It's not just doing what you believe you know how to do. It is about constantly communicating with your spouse about what feels good, what doesn't, because we've said this many times, but things change. What worked 15 years ago may not have the same impact or effect today. And so there's some things to talk about. But as you get into having the conversations, maybe that is part of it, right? Before you decide to come together physically, maybe you spend a few minutes to just talk and share and talk about your experience, right? And for some, depending on which generation you're in, that is just unconscionable. It is you there's no way we can talk about sex. We can have sex, but there's no way we can talk about sex. Well, I would like to challenge those conventions and invite you to talk about it, because talking about it is important and it leads to deeper connection.
Yeah. So talking about it for some people, I mean, it's like, what? What are we gonna say, right? But I think you're right, and you know, most people when they come together in marriage, they believe it's going to be a certain way, and then sometimes things change,
Yep.
right? And so when things change, and when we have to change, it is really important to have a conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
I love what Arvia said. She said intimacy is much more than sex. It's a soul connection of true appreciation for who we are.
Yeah, that's
Right.
beautiful.
It is, and I think that if we are able to understand that, then the physical act, it really does become secondary, right? And so this discovery and this care for another person, critically important.
Yeah.
And even if this is not a challenge for you, it's critically important, like right now, today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And, we talk about, you said be creative or broaden your options. And I remember years ago we watched Real Sex on HBO. And they would have some sometimes
I mean,
outrageous things.
I have to say, I'm a little anxious right now. Like, where's she going? Where you going?
Yeah, well,
What's she gonna say?
I'm not gonna
So
say
bad.
anything. I'm not endorsing that you watch it. I'm just saying that there would be some things that we were even surprised by. It's like, what? I mean, but some of those things included ways to achieve pleasure or orgasm without penetration, without having sex, right? And so I remember one in particular was about tantric breathing. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured you would.
I mean, I remember the word. I don't
Probably
remember.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
But rhythmic breathing, that and listening to your body and controlling your body, and this whole idea of mastering your own body, right? Knowing your body inside and out, and being able to then express to the other person how they can please you. And so, what does that mean in the absence of sex? Well, there are a number of things. A number of ways to connect physically that don't include penetration. And so when we talk about that and caring for each other and loving each other, whether that's massage, whether that is brushing your hair,
Or rubbing your feet.
yeah, man, rubbing the feet. But all of those different
Dare I
things,
say.
whatever it is for you. But talking about those things, right? Here's what you could do for me. In place of having sex, here's how you can love me well.
And I think it's important to recognize that not everybody even really knows the answer to that question for themselves.
Yes.
And so, it's this kind of this mutual journey of discovery, and so which I'll bring kind of to the next point. Be patient,
Yeah. Yes.
be kind, and be loving,
Yeah.
because it's a journey, and it's something that you have to walk through together, and it can't be a journey that you walk through, with an iron fist, or with these expectations, like, something's got to happen or else, right? It's really about, I don't know, just caring for each other, having empathy, and just slowing down, be patient, and let it be whatever it is.
Yeah, and we're complicated, but I think sometimes we try to make things too simple, right? We oversimplify. And it's like, man, as long as we eat, we have a roof over our heads, and we have a place to sleep, and we have sex, then we're good. I
That's it.
mean,
This is
simplified,
it.
right? But there's so much more to it than that. And I think that even, as we really kind of explore on this journey together what it takes to be in a healthy, thriving marriage, this is just another conversation to be had. It's another area to explore, it's another place to go deeper together, right? It's not just surface. What can you share? What can you talk about? How can you connect in a different way? What haven't you tried that maybe you're interested in? How can you learn together? What can you read? What can you buy? What can you try that will enhance and maybe change how you connect?
Yeah, yeah. And so, in that vein, I think the last thing is, any solution that you come up with that is a solo solution is probably not the right solution,
Yes.
right? So this is not about going off and like, I got to get release, right? It's not that.
Nope.
And so there are three things to avoid, the three P's to avoid. Typically I kind of scoff. I frown on the alliteration, but whatever.
Yes.
First time for everything. The three P's, right? And that's porn, pics, and people outside of your marriage. Those are the things you must avoid if you're going to continue to deepen your intimacy and grow closer together and not further apart.
Yeah.
Porn, pics, people outside your marriage, right? For sexual pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think if you get into self gratification and self pleasing, that you're not only cheating yourself, but you're cheating your spouse. And, and if it's not something that you would do in front of them or with them, then it's probably something that you should not do alone. What?
I'm just saying, some people are like,
Yeah.
are like three P's.
Pics, Pics, pictures.
Oh,
is
pics.
what he said.
Yes, pictures,
yes.
pictures. Yeah,
Pornography, pictures, or people outside of your marriage.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But you said I don't know. People can get a little, you know what I'm saying? They do stuff in front of their spouse. I'm just saying some people will.
You're right.
So
If it's something that you do in front of
But
your spouse, then
it might not be okay. Still, anyway, just listen, y'all. Just porn, pictures, people outside your marriage. Right? Those are things to avoid, because anything that you begin to experience and build and cultivate
Yeah.
outside of your marriage is pulling you apart,
Yes.
and you're not doing the work of growing the intimacy in your marriage. So
Right. And so the idea is to create connection, create connection within your marriage, not create connection outside of it, right?
Yeah.
And so we've talked about, and if you've come to a weekend to remember, we talk about this idea of oneness and isolation, right? And that you're either actively working on becoming one, or that you are potentially and unknowingly drifting apart. And so you may not realize that you're drifting apart, because sometimes it just happens. It can happen. But you absolutely have to be active and intentional about coming closer together, staying connected.
yeah, exactly. And about those pits, if your pits ain't right, maybe that could impact sex life too.
Oh my goodness. Smells.
Anyway, the hour is kind of gotten away. So just kind of a little bit of a recap. If sex is not possible in your marriage, maintain contact and connection with each other and with God. Right? Pray together, worship together. If you're in agreement, and you have to be in agreement, broaden your options. Right? Try not to come home with the manual like, hey, we can try this, try this, this, that. No, just
or new toys that
Right.
you mutually select.
So just come together, agree, but discover each other. Use your whole body.
Yeah.
And again, if you're feeling a little insecure about that, read Song of Solomon, and you will see references in there generally around vegetation and fruit and stuff. It's like, what are they talking about? You know what they're talking about. So there's that. That's Hebrews 13. No, I'm sorry. That's Song of Solomon, rather. Hebrews 13:4 is the verse that talks about letting marriage be held in honor among all, and the marriage bed being undefiled.
Yes.
Be patient, be kind, be loving. Use 1 Corinthians 13 4 as a guide for how you handle and communicate with one another. And avoid the 3 P's: porn, pictures, people outside of your marriage. So for sexual pleasure. And that's it. But God can fill you up, and you can be as fulfilled and settled and at peace
Yeah.
with sex or without.
Yeah, and
So-
that scripture in Corinthians, I mean, that last, I think it's verse 8 that says love never ends, right? But sex does. And I think that, how much we put into it really determines really what we're able to enjoy, right? It is something to be cultivated. It is something to be built. It is something that you sow into. It is something that you mutually create. It is something that you feed. Love is so important in any relationship, but love is the thing that your marriage cannot survive without.
Yeah. So grow your intimacy, right? Begin inside, and everything else will flow from that. And you'll be just fine.
Yeah.
We're going to pray with y'all real quick. Heavenly Father, we just come to you tonight. Just thank you for being God. And we just ask God that for every married couple, whether they're able to engage in sex, whether they're not, help them to understand what's really important, and that is our connection directly to you, and allow that to bring us closer together, God. Allow our intimacy to grow, our love to grow, our care, kindness to grow toward one another. We just ask that you bless each couple here, or the married couples, engaged couples, people who are yet to be married. God, just be with them, be in their hearts, God, and fill them up so that they can be satisfied with just you and your Holy Spirit. So we thank you, we love you, we pray these and all blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So we hope we shared something that would be helpful to you this week. And we hope that you are able to maybe take us up on one of those challenges. But our prayer, ongoing prayer and hope for each of you is that you, if nothing else, have hope for a healthy and loving marriage. So with that said, we will see you next Monday.
Yeah.
Same time, same place.
We'll try to lighten it up for y'all a little bit next Monday. All right, but
Yes.
we love y'all. Appreciate y'all so much.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
All right, we will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's your boy JC. I'm in the mood. Love, yeah. Lately I've been constantly thinking about the pain. You drive me crazy, yeah. And girl, I want this. Got me all up in my feelings. Oh, what a feeling, yeah. I knew the first time I laid eyes on you, that you would be here forever. I'm not being arrogant, and I still can't take my eyes off you. 'Cause you made me better, so much better. I'm in the mood to love you for a lifetime. I'm in the mood to love you for a lifetime, baby. I love your kindness, I love your confidence. Ooh, you're the finest. So glad you're mine, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't wanna be with nobody else. Give me your love, that's all the wealth I need. Baby, you're priceless to me, yeah. To love you for a lifetime. I'm in the mood It's the sweetest sound to follow my ear. And I want the world to know I'll love you forever. And that's a long time, babe. But I got time for you, baby. I'm in the mood. Time for a lifetime. I'm in the mood to love you, yeah. For a lifetime, baby. Ooh, yeah. For a lifetime, oh, for a lifetime.